Welcome to JMW's Inside Man YouTube channel. Now we're heading towards the festive period. Emma Salkin is a paralegal within JMW's employment law team. So Emma, we're heading towards the festive season now. But there's always the worry about the Christmas party and how employers deal with that. How can employers manage expectations going into this festive period?
So it's always really good to have policies year round which help manage the expectations of your employees, but specifically leading up to the Christmas period, it's a really good opportunity for employers to remind their employees of the values by sending around their company policies, specifically in relation to misconduct, alcohol and drug abuse, and sexual harassment. And it's also a really good idea to ask their employees to confirm that they read and understood the policies. Leading up to the Christmas party, employees also should be reminded that even though the party may be held outside of business premises and outside of business hours, they're still representing their organisation when attending a party in a public venue. So their behaviour needs to reflect the company values, including treating the venue staff, the taxi drivers, and each other with respect. And this is especially if they have, name badges on them which clearly identify where they work. It's also a good idea that employees should be reminded of any available social media policies. Any employee wishing to share content on their personal social media accounts should do so using common sense, and they should also ensure that what they post is appropriate and is not linked to the company in any way. The last thing it's useful to remember is that not everyone celebrates Christmas, so efforts must be made to ensure that all employees are invited to the celebrations, including any employees on family leave, such as maternity and paternity leave, or on long-term sick, and that they're not excluded. Employers must check to ensure that the party does not involve any activities which may exclude certain people so as to avoid discrimination claims.
And I'm sure every employer hopes that nothing will go wrong. But if something does go wrong, something potentially embarrassing, something far worse, are employers liable then for that conduct of the employee?
So the answer to that is most likely yes. However, there's certain exceptions. There's a principle which we call vicarious liability, which can arise in certain circumstances where the employer is liable for the actions, the wrongdoings, comments of their employees during the course of their employment. And it doesn't matter that the employer itself hasn't committed any wrongdoing. It may seem unfair, but employers can be vicariously liable for their employees if the wrongful act would have been committed as a result of an activity held by an employer, such as hosting a Christmas party, and the employee is to some degree seen as being under control of the employer during the party, which is a work event. Vicarious liability may not apply where there is no relationship between the wrongdoer and the employer. So in situations where you're inviting independent contractors to the party. However, there will be liability where there is temporary employment arrangements, such as where you're inviting agency workers. Another defence is when the employee or the wrongdoer lacks the state of mind and does the act as an individual themselves and away from any aspect of the business. There's a really interesting case from 2018 called Bellman and Northampton Recruitment Limited, where an assault was carried out by the managing director on another employee during an unscheduled drinking session after the Christmas party. And it was found that the organisation was actually vicariously liable for that act taking part in the unscheduled drinking session after the Christmas party. So it's also really important for employees to be careful outside of the event itself and for events following that too.
And if the worst does happen, Emma, if there is misconduct, two things really. How do employers deal with that? And how can you and the employment team at JMW Solicitors help?
So if an employer finds out after the Christmas party that there was potential misconduct, they should investigate this as soon as possible. Furthermore, they must be willing to follow through processes if their employees raise either informal complaints or formal grievances. And the ACAS code have really useful guides on how to deal with grievance procedures and how to deal with disciplinary processes. It's especially advisable to take legal advice when you're looking at a dismissal, especially for an employee who has over 2 years service and they could claim for unfair dismissal. But our team can help with employers when they're in the receipt of grievances or when they're looking at going through a disciplinary process, and we can advise how to take the best process and route in that situation.
Thanks very much, Emma. And if you'd like to contact Emma and the employment law team here at JMW Solicitors, you can email insideman@jmw.co.uk or call 0161 82 81 999. Please also subscribe to the JMW Inside Man YouTube channel for the latest legal news, hints and tips. I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man.